I'm Jamie Jaramillo, the Community Development Manager with Sandia Area.
And I'm Paige Ferrando, the Marketing Specialist.
This is just a quick rundown of what we're going to cover. It's a big list of things, but we're going to cover a lot today. So we're going to talk about the difference between debit and credit. We're going to talk about credit scores. What is a credit report? How do those things differ? How do they work together? We're going to talk about debt as a whole and credit cards. We're going to do a really fun exercise that we call the future money timeline. And then we're going to bust some credit myths. Then we have some fun giveaways. So first topic, and we get this question so much. What is the difference between debit and credit? Does anybody know? It's a big question. So debit is spending your own money. So you walk into a checking account, you give the teller $100 to put into your checking account. She gives you a debit card. You go and you swipe your card at the gas station, $40. Today, probably closer to $100. $40, we're gonna call it. And that money is pulled directly from your checking account. Okay, that's money that you already have. A credit card is you walk up to the bank teller and you say, I want to sign up for a credit card. She gives you a $100 limit. You go to the gas station, you swipe that card, $40. At the end of the month, they're going to send you a bill for that $40. If you don't pay the full $40 by that bill date, they're going to charge you interest. So no longer did that tank of gas cost you $40. It cost you $40 plus interest. That's a small example, but it multiplies over time. So in general, debit is no interest. It does not affect your credit at all. It does not affect your credit rating and is connected to a checking account. Credit is borrowed money. You're borrowing money from a financial institution. Credit cards can have annual fees. They can have ATM fees. They can charge interest, just like I talked about. But a credit card will help you to build your credit history over time. And if you use it wisely, you can do that very easily. This credit is built in forms like credit cards, loans, buy it now, pay it later type of services, and requires some form of application process. A debit would not, a checking account would not. So very slight differences, but can be a big difference over time. Awesome. I think skipped a slide. Go. Okay, so two big topics, credit scores and credit reports. Credit scores are typically a number that ranges from 300 to 850. And this score shows lenders how risky it might be to lend to you. And a higher score can actually help you get lower interest rates, better loan options, which translates to paying less over time if that credit score is higher. You can actually check your credit score for free through different bank apps, through credit card issuers, and services online for free like creditkarma.com. You can also check your credit through the three major credit bureaus, which we're going to touch on each of the bureaus in depth in a bit. This is what builds a credit score. These 5 big topic areas. The biggest one by far, 35%, is payment history. So paying your bills on time is one of those things that will make it or break it on your credit score. Capacity is how much you owe. So if you, going back to that same example of a $100 credit limit, if you use $40, that's actually 40% of your credit limit. So you want to try and keep that capacity to about 30% over all of your credit availability. 15% is how long you've had credit. Obviously, that one only gets better with time, but is a good percentage. 10% is inquiries. So when you last made a credit application, so if you're going to every financial institution on the block and making a credit application, those are going to hit your credit. That makes up 10% of your score. And then 10% is the type of credit that you use. So you want to make sure to diversify a little bit. Maybe have a credit card, maybe have a personal loan or an auto loan, eventually a mortgage in some cases. So that's a very diverse use of your types of credit. Explain. Any questions on credit scores? Okay, jump into soft versus hard.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, how much of your credit balance should be spent percentage? Let's say it's like 1,800. How much of the should be spent?
How much should you spend? You wanna try and stay under that 30% threshold. Obviously, that's not always possible. But what's 30% of 1,300? $400, $450. That's a good threshold to try and stay under. Obviously, you're gonna go above that sometimes. But when you pay your bill at the end of the month, if you can't pay off the full balance, you wanna try and be in that 30% range.
So let's talk about the difference between a soft pull versus a hard pull. So a soft pull is the one that can affect your credit score. The soft pull happens when, say, you check your own credit scores. If you have the Experian app, or you go online with Credit Karma, maybe you get pre-approved for something, or you get a new job and they run a background check. Those are soft pulls. They cannot affect your score. A hard pull, or as a lot of places call it, an inquiry. This occurs when lenders check your credit to make that lending decision to see if you're trustworthy. And this typically lowers your score only by a few points, but it does stay on that credit report for up to 2 years.
So it's good to go in and ask them, are you gonna do a soft pull or a hard pull on my credit? Because lender to lender, it could change. And the stage and the process that you're in can also differ. So there are some lenders out there that can do a soft pull and not affect your credit at a very preliminary stage of an application. And then once you're ready to sign on the dotted line, it's when they'll do the hard pull.
A good example would be, say you go to a credit union and you open a checking account, they're gonna do a soft pull so they have a record of your credit score, but it's not gonna affect it. But if you open a credit card through that same company, that is most likely gonna be a third party checking and doing a hard pull of your credit. So you'll notice that difference there. Any questions on software? Pretty self-explanatory. So we've mentioned credit reports a couple times now, but what is a credit report? So a credit report is a detailed record of that credit, and it's very different than a credit score, but they do go hand in hand. So it shows your payment history and what you currently owe. It shows the types of accounts you have. It tells how long accounts have been open. This can also be requested for once per year from each of those 3 credit bureaus that Jamie had mentioned. And a really good way of doing that is going to annualcreditreport.com. They have all 3 of them listed and do it in one place, which is really good. That's free. It's per year. By checking your credit report, it helps you spot mistakes or find theft, because everywhere makes mistakes, whether that's the credit bureaus or the billers. And if you check that on your own, then you can easily spot if something doesn't look right. And again, it's not your actual credit score that you can check in other places.
So just to reinforce what Paige mentioned, credit reports and credit scores, they do work hand in hand, but they're not the same thing. And when you pull your credit report from annualcreditreport.com or any of the 3 credit bureaus, it's not going to show you your score.
It'll just show everything that goes into your score. So these are those 3 credit bureaus that we keep mentioning: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And they're all pretty much the same thing, but they collect and update and sell consumer credit information just a little bit different. So they all collect data a little differently. This is a really good image to look at because it shows the data sources and how they go into each of those bureaus. And then those bureaus push out the credit reports and they do things just a little different. Equifax has a credit range of 300 to 850, and as you'll notice, so does TransUnion. But Experian's range is a little different. They do 250 to 280 to 850, and Experian is the largest one. So that's the one that's most well known. I use the Experian app, so it's just the most common one. And it also offers tools like Experian Boost, and basically what that is self-reporting. So you self-report and it goes through and it can help your score in the long run. TransUnion has a different percentage scale than the other two. So the slide that Jamie had where it showed 30% goes to this, 10% goes to this, yeah, those. TransUnion is slightly off than the other two. Not by much, but a couple percentages here and there. So again, it just collects data differently. One thing to note is not one or the other is better. So they are all equally important, they just do things differently. So when you're going through the bureaus and you're looking at your reports, there's not necessarily a huge difference. They just do it slightly different and none of them are more important than the others.
So what is debt as an umbrella? Debt is what you owe after using credit, right? So going back to the example of the credit card, the debt would be that $40 that you swiped your card onto the credit card. But debt grows when borrowed money isn't paid back on time, right? And that interest payment is gonna hit you every month. And using credit means that you will need to pay it back later, and making payments on time will really help to keep debt manageable and your credit healthy. Also, it grows with interest if not paid on time. So if you don't pay that $40 that you charged on your credit card at the end of the month, that is going to charge you interest, and that $40 balance is going to transfer over to the next month. Or it could be $25 if you paid a little bit toward that minimum payment. So if you don't pay the whole balance in full, the interest charge is going to hit you at the month mark. This means that you'll end up paying more over time and longer as the unpaid balance potentially grows. So some ways to really start building credit and manage debt. Pay your bills on time. You're gonna hear us say that throughout this presentation. That is the biggest factor. Pay your bills on time. Payment history is that biggest factor. Keeping credit and credit card balances low, trying to stay under that 30% threshold that we talked about. And then starting small, starting with either a student or a secured card to begin building your credit history on a slightly smaller scale. Credit cards, big one here, only buy what you can pay back. It can look very similar to the debit example that I gave. When you swipe your credit card, you want to make sure that either have that dollar amount in your checking account, or after payday, you're gonna have that dollar checking account so that you can pay. Putting expenses on your credit card that you can't pay back really does build debt fast. And then ultimately you end up paying more for that. Watch for annual fees and interest rates. Every financial institution out there is going to have a different credit card, and potentially more than one credit card product that could fit your lifestyle. So comparing both annual fees and interest rates, institution to institution, very, very important to do your research. And it doesn't always have to be with the financial institution that you do most of your banking with. I, for instance, have credit cards with 3 different financial institutions, 2 of which I don't even bank with regularly. So it's good to have a relationship with different financial institutions while also comparing the annual fees and the interest rates. With regard to loans, definitely try and keep track of those student loans and when you can start paying towards them, because they differ. All of them are different products. All of the lenders are a little bit different. So keep track of when you can start paying toward them and know when that interest starts to apply. Because it may not apply while you're still in school, but it may hit the day that you end school. So just keep track of when that interest starts to apply. And then in general, avoid high interest debt. A big example for this one is payday loans. Those interest payments can be so steep, sometimes more than the money that you tried to borrow. So trying to keep that interest low, big priority. Managing debt.
So let's talk a little bit more about credit cards. Like Jamie mentioned, there's secured credit cards and there's student credit cards. So let's kind of look at what the difference is. A secured credit card is designed to help build or repair your credit, but this requires a refundable security deposit and it just acts as collateral on it. So typically the deposit matches the credit limit. If you put 500 in, your limit's gonna be 500. And it works just like a normal credit card. The only difference is you put a deposit down. It's just so that they can help you and know that you're trustworthy. Now, a student credit card is very beginner friendly. It's designed for college students with little to no credit history, and they also function just like a normal credit card. It's easier to get approved for, and there's lower credit limits on them. A lot of the time, they offer rewards on them, so that are more suitable for students. Look out for those. Some of them are kind of nice. But this one does not require a deposit. So that is the main difference between the two, is one is really help showing that you're trustworthy, and one is made just to get you started if you have no history.
Something that we don't mention in the presentation, but something I wanna mention now, is having no credit history can be difficult for you when you go in to, say, buy your first vehicle, or even consider buying a home. Having little to no credit history, is a negative. So starting with a secured card or a student card can be a really smart way to start building history over time, now while you're in school, so that when you are ready to make that first big to a credit or debt situation, you have that student credit card or the secured card history in your credit. It's much better to show that you started small and started with one account, going for that first application.
So this is our version of the secured credit card. I'm not really gonna talk about it because I do want you guys to do your own research and find what institution works best for you. But our secured card is called the Access MasterCard, works the exact same, just has a different name. And if you want to learn more about what we offer, it's on our website, savedev.org/credit cards, but I'll let you guys do your own research on that.
But happy to answer any questions that you might have. All right, we're really excited to work on this activity with you. Jason's burn, pass this out. All of this.
Okay, who needs a pen? You have, you.
We have pens up at the top too, okay? Any questions before we jump into the activity? How about online? All right. So before we jump into this activity, I want to pause for a second and ask you something. How often do you think about your future when it comes to money? I know we probably think about our future when it comes to our education, our career, maybe the salary that we want to make, right? But as it relates to all your money decisions, how often do you spend your time thinking about that? Not just for the next week, or maybe to the next paycheck, but really 2 years or 5 years or 10 years down the road. Here's the truth. That's completely normal. Most people avoid thinking about the future when it comes to money. But whether your money is going to help you or hurt you, your financial decisions today that you make today are going to shape that future. And whether you're in control of it or reacting to it. So what we're gonna do right now is create something really simple, right? We gave you a piece of paper that has some bubbles on it. For those of you online, you can create this on just a blank sheet of paper. It's really simple, but it's also really powerful. We call it the future money timeline, and it isn't about being perfect. It's not about having all the answers, it's about being really intentional and thoughtful about your future. I want you to think about the life that you want, not just financially, but overall. And then start connecting to real milestones. When do you want to be out of debt? When do you want to start your credit journey? When do you want to have a savings? When might you buy a car or travel, or even start thinking about buying a home? Because those life moments, they all have a financial component to them. And as you fill this out, I want you to be honest with yourself. Think about really what matters to you now and not what you're supposed to say really matters. And here's the really important part. This timeline is not permanent. It's a starting point. It's where you're at today. Plans change, life changes, but having a direction, that's really what puts you ahead of most people. So take a few moments, be thoughtful about it, and start mapping out what your future could look like. Here are some examples or ideas that you might add to your future funding timeline. So go ahead and take a few minutes. Paige and I will show you our examples as you guys are working on that.
So this is my timeline. You'll notice that closer to the beginning, so more towards the now, I would love to create better spending habits because that is something I struggle with. And that includes sticking to a monthly budget, which I try so hard to create new budgets, but that's on my timeline. And as you'll notice, as I go down the road, I would love to invest more into my Roth, buy my first home. I would really love to invest in some real estate and then obtain those multiple forms of income by doing that. I would love to retire early and hopefully maintain a long positive credit history during that whole time. But yeah, those are some of my goals.
Some of my goals are to pay off my house. I have two little ones. I have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I've started education accounts for them, but I would like to fully fund those at some point. Some point in the future. I want to establish an individual taxable investment account that I can start meandering through the world of investments and figuring out what works best for me and my family. I'd like to support my kids through college and eventually travel with my kids, potentially overseas. I want to fully fund my retirement before I retire, hopefully much before I retire. And then you'll also see that I have some question marks up here. Those are things that like I aspire to maybe one day. Maybe I won't get there, but having them on my future money timeline gives me something to shoot, even if it doesn't feel like a reality today. So please take your time, put a few ideas down. Do we have any questions online?
Let you know, Highlands offers an online MBA that were less expensive than the other universities, so.
I love that. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah,
I haven't started my research yet. That's why I have it on my future money timeline.
well, consider that when you do your research.
I will. You guys have a branch in Rio Rancho, right?
We do, we have a center in Rio Rancho. It depends on what your major is, though, on what's offered there, but if you do the online, obviously, yeah, so.
Is it a 2-year program?
Yes, it is a 2-year, or if you decide to go part-time, we can extend it to like 3, that's what I did. I did 2 classes a semester and they were 8 weeks long, so really, I was only in class at a time, that's finished in 3 years.
That's not a long time at
It's
all.
not, it's really not. Very doable. While
Did you
you're
do it-
working
did you
and
do it
being
fully
aware.
online?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there were some classes that weren't in person, but because I'm here, I would come in person, but it's full time.
It's good to know.
I worked full time and I have kids, so
Oh my goodness.
you can do it.
I wanna wait until they're a little bit bigger to start doing some research and really trying to figure out what.
At least when they're in school, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Paige is in school now, she's. I graduated in May.
My last 2 years have been online because I switched to working full time and I could no longer come into class. I also switched universities. I started at Western New Mexico in Silver City that for 2 years, and then I switched to UNM to do it online.
Oh, okay.
That's what I trained for.
Marketing's fun. I taught a marketing class one. It was so fun. It's just, I think this should have been my concentration.
We regularly say that we have the best job in the city.
Nice. That's awesome.
We get to talk about our services and products, but we also get to all student community events just like this.
Awesome.
All right, so let's come back together for a minute. And I'll just ask, how did that feel? For some of you, it might have felt kind of exciting. Like you're starting to see a path maybe. Or for others, it might have felt a little overwhelming. Maybe even a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah, both of those reactions are completely normal. Because what you just did is something that most people avoid. Very plain and simply. You took the time to think about your future and put some intention behind it. Because here's what I want you to take away from this. Your timeline doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be exact. And it definitely doesn't have to match anyone else's, what anyone else has done or has in mind for you. What matters is that you start to think about it. Because once you have a really rough plan, right? Question marks in there, you can really begin to make your decisions today about how to spend your money, how to use credit to build towards some of these goals, and what opportunities to say yes or no to. That's the biggest one for me, the opportunities to say yes or no to. Those gonna help me get to one of these potentially. And all of those small decisions really start to align with where you want to go over time. And you've taken the first step.
And it's not set in stone, we can change it, right?
Exactly.
And it should be changed.
Exactly. Check in with yourself at 6 months. Check in with yourself in 12 months, in 2 years. And see how your priorities or your goals have shifted, or how you've potentially gotten closer to one of them, or maybe even accomplished one of them. So something to think about.
Kind of like reevaluating your budget, how you're supposed to do it every month or however often works best for you. And things should change based on new goals, new wants.
All right, so we're gonna bust some credit myths after the presentation. First myth, checking your credit score lowers it. True or false? Oh. Checking your credit score, that soft inquiry that Paige talked about, doesn't affect your score. Only a lender inquiry or a hard pull or an actual credit application can lower it. But the silver lining here is to always ask that lender what kind of pull they're gonna do on your credit.
What about your income influences your credit score?
True or false? False.
Credit scores are based on your debt management and payment behavior. It is not based on how much money you've earned or how much money you have.
And what's the biggest thing that influences your credit score? Repayment, paying your bills on time.
Keeping it at 30%.
Paying off a debt removes it from your credit report. False, that is very good. Overdue payments can remain on your credit report for up to 7 years, even after you pay it off.
Does anybody have any questions on anything we talked about? One thing we do wanna make sure to really mention is the decisions you make now with your credit during this stage of life. I am currently in this stage of life, so I get it. Can either create momentum or barriers. Credit is So important, and being intentional with doing control, what comes next.
Yeah,
What is your credit score start out? Like, what is it automatically at the highest or?
it depends on your first payment. So that first payment is gonna really be important, right? So if you're paying on time, it's gonna start somewhere in the high range. And then it'll depend every month on how you're paying down that debt. That's why starting small is the best way to start, right? Don't start with all of your bills and all of your monthly expenses, putting it on that credit card. Maybe start with just gas or just your cell phone payment and paying it off every month on time or before the deadline.
Credit can be tricky, so if you have student loans or any sort of loan open, it'll be on your credit report, but you typically don't really see it. And that's not, it's like student loans, for example, I have student loans on my credit report, but they're just at a stalled state because I can't pay on them yet. But they do influence my score. Your credit score typically starts out at a pretty medium range, I would say. But it's not gonna be very high only because there's not a whole lot of history. And there's not a whole lot of lines of credit open to influence that score to make it go higher. So it really does kind of take a lot of time. And debt. But not all debt is bad debt. Some debt is good debt. It just depends how you pay it.
How you use it. You had a question?
So I had to ask, what's the worst? Because right, I don't want that many students to really have, I just have like one credit card. Do you think that's just like, maybe I'm just starting because just what's the state.
Everybody's situation is different. I always advocate for starting small. So where you're at sounds perfect to me. You have one line of credit, and if you're paying toward it every month on time, you're building that credit history, which is the most important thing. As you eventually make it to the point where you might want different lines of credit for different reasons. So for instance, you could have a credit card that you're paying your bills with. You could have a credit card that you're paying for gas or your monthly expenses on. So that you're building you're building your credit history in two different ways. That's how I manage it. But I wouldn't say that there's ever a maximum that I would advocate for because every situation is different, right? And the best time to apply for credit is when you don't actually need it. Because say you lose a job and that is a point where you might need to use a credit card for payments. A lender is going to look at that loss in employment and say, where's your money going to be coming from? You don't have a way to repay the credit card, so I'm sorry, but you're denied for this credit. So the best time to apply for credit is when you don't actually need credit. But always consider the annual fee and the interest rate when you are applying for a new credit card. Because there are credit cards out there that do not have annual fees. There are credit cards out there that have caps on the amount of interest that can be charged. Credit unions are actually held to a cap for the amount of interest that can be charged. So that's something to compare when you're looking at financial institution compared to financial institution.
It also depends on your wants. For example, I love to travel. So the main credit card that I use, I put all my spending on and pay it off is a travel credit card. I have a Southwest card because I get points. So look at rewards too, based on what your habits are, what your needs and wants are. Because that helps me save money in the long run because I'm putting my day-to-day spending and receiving points in exchange.
Any other questions? How about